This garden might be looking quite full actually, but the other side of the yard is starting to look a little bit empty. I've pulled out a few beds, including a lot of my tomatoes, like the determinate tomatoes. So today, what we have to do is fill in all the empty gaps across the garden. I have a bunch of starts. Some of them are my own, but some I actually purchased from the nursery. I also actually planted a bunch in a big tote bin just to try to save these starts while I went on vacation. So we're gonna see how they're doing right now. I'm actually surprised by how well it did. So here are some of the starts. I have way more tomatoes than I could ever possibly need, especially for this time of the year. I have a backup okra around here, which I'm excited for because my other okra, it's just lagging a lot. And this later half of the season in San Diego is where it gets really warm here. Sort of the August into September are usually the hottest months, but this year has been cool overall. I can't say I'm complaining, but I have some flowers, some greens, a lot of different herbs, so we're going to probably cycle in some of those. But over here, I wanted to show you that tub because that tub has been a huge lifesaver for me. Take a look at this right here. It's just a cement mixing tub, and all I've done is fill it in with all the plants that were desperate to go into the ground, but I didn't have anywhere to put them. So all I did is I filled this with potting mix, I put all my starts in, and now what I could do is basically come in here with my hand, go in low, and then pull out these starts. So now I have a much bigger root ball because they've been able to grow in here for about a week since I went on vacation. So for example, this here is a cauliflower. I want to make sure I saved it since I grew it from seed early. So we're gonna find somewhere to put this in the garden, but let's gather some supplies and we'll head over to the other garden. I'll show you the space we have to work with and we'll see how many plants we could basically get into the ground today. All right, so here's the garden we are working in today primarily. This is that big bed where I pulled out all the determinate tomatoes already. So this is prime for replanting. Plenty of space, I could fit quite a lot in here. The cucumber trellis is actually growing. It's got its second sort of resurgence. All the top growth looks really, really happy and healthy. I put a couple younger starts in like that guy right there. So this should fill in just fine. But in this front row, it's actually empty. So we could put in some starts right there. Good spot for either more brassicas or something else. And on this side, I have my arugula, which is growing a little bit slow, I have to say. Beans, I'm trying beans again in this bed, even though they've never actually been able to grow. And even right now, they are still suffering. They have these leaves dying off here, but there are some little baby beans that are forming. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this will work out in the end. And back here, it's actually interesting because these are the exact same brassicas that I just showed you in that big black bin where I've been keeping the starts alive for a little bit longer. And they're basically the exact same size. I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Actually, we'll say that it's not. I would expect these to be much bigger, but the soil is definitely well watered. And maybe that's the issue, is that it's getting too much water with these plants not growing very quickly. But they do look happy, they're just not growing very quickly. So let's go get some plants and start filling in the garden. Let's get started in this raised bed. So this raised bed is perfect for growing vertical crops like tomatoes, especially since I have this trellis and it is a nice raised bed that's filled with better soil. But what happened was that all the tomatoes that were in this row here had root knot nematode. Now these were tomatoes I purchased from the nursery, so I suspect that all of that root knot nematode came from them because I dug around these guys' roots and I didn't find any. And the other thing is they're producing like crazy. So if they had root knot nematode, they probably wouldn't have produced as heavily as they did, whereas all the tomatoes up front here just did very poorly. So what we are going to do instead is I will be adding in more marigolds, as many as I can throughout the season. But for now, I want to add in some red Russian kale and this Beatola de Costa Fine green chard. Now these are both perfect to put in right now. Even though it's still hot, this kale honestly doesn't look very great. So take a look at it right here. It has kind of ratty leaves and it's just because I've been stringing it along for too long in a container. So by putting it in the ground now, I'm hoping to give it a nice burst of life. I have a new 6-pack of kale that I've already started. So this is going to be the initial sort of planting. What I'm going to do is just put it next to an emitter, try to take it as close as possible to irrigation so it doesn't have to suffer throughout this summer, especially when it's about to get nice and warm. So we're gonna go ahead, pop that guy in right there. And then I'm gonna take the other one and just put it in between these marigolds here. I wanna give it a little bit of extra space because what I'll probably do is a bunch of sort of winter and fall sowings around these plants, things like beets, carrots, radishes, turnips, anything that doesn't take up that much space that could grow pretty quickly. I'll go ahead and fill in any gaps like that. For now, we're just building in the main plants, and then later in the season, we'll fill in the gaps probably in a couple weeks or even maybe a month. So there's 2 kales, Now I'm gonna go ahead and throw in these chards, and we'll move on to planting some peppers, even though it's almost the end of summer. The initial plan was to put the peppers in the other side of the garden, but I actually thought about it and I remembered that I have a free spot in a raised bed back there. So let me walk you through this side of the garden. It's very lush, very full right now, and I'll go find that spot in the back that I'm thinking of. Over here is the majority of the cherry tomatoes that I'm growing this year, as well as a pepper bed. So this pepper bed is now starting to produce. There's actually a Mad Hatter pepper there with its funny little shape. Over on this side, I have the majority of my peppers. These are the ones that look better, and they're actually also starting to ripen quite nicely now. So there's an Escamillo pepper. I saw a flash of red somewhere in here. Yes, it's these guys, these little round stuffing peppers, and plenty of Jimmy Nardellos. Now, in terms of tomatoes, the tomatoes over here are extremely productive this year. They've been pumping out tomatoes nonstop, and I actually still have quite a few tomatoes to harvest, even though I harvested literally over a dozen of slicers from right here. The good news, the plants at the top are looking very nice and healthy. Some of the lower leaves were starting to die back, and I was thinking of actually cutting down these plants entirely. But all this new growth looks so good that I actually will probably let them ride a little bit longer. They've been in the ground for so long, it's like kind of silly to think about just restarting at this point. So over here, this is all in construction. I'm replacing this fabric bed. It's been fine, but I want to put in something more permanent like a birdie's bed. So I've already been mapping out the location of all these new beds. I have one over there already. One's gonna go over here. Might get a little bit tight, haven't quite decided yet. But here's the bed in question. The L-shaped bed has plenty of room here. This whole back half is unplanted as well. So I'm going to definitely keep this tomato because it's still producing a ton of really nice sauce tomatoes. But the rest of this, let's go ahead and fill it with peppers. All right, so first we actually need to fill this bed up with some more soil, and I'm gonna place these in the ground, but I'm actually not going to bury them. So that's perfect, 5 shishitos in the ground. Now the reason why I didn't bury them is because this is a rooting and fruiting fertilizer that I've sort of diluted to the feeding strength of where your plant that is fruiting. The idea behind this is that these starts are quite old, and they just haven't had a good access to nutrients this whole time because they've been kept in these containers for such a long time. I think I bought these maybe like 3 weeks ago with the intention of planting and just never did. So that's why I didn't bury them. I wanted to make sure that all of this fertility hit the root balls straight on. And then once I've done that, I can now come through and bury them in. And let's see what else we want to put in here. Let's start off with this Brazilian pepper, ají mango, piquinho number 2. This is the ancho, and habanada. Perfect. And the last 2 sweet bananas are just going to pop in on the sides here. So let's go through and give them all a little drink right on the root ball. And the last plant I'm gonna put in right here is the Anaheim pepper, and then we'll move back to the other garden and fill those beds in. But before we move on, like I had promised, this bed desperately needed mulch. Even a thin layer of mulch is better than no mulch. I really have left this bed unmulched for too long. Initially, part of it was because it was a new bed and I expected some amount of settling, but I don't know, honestly not a very good excuse. I should have just mulched at the start to save water because the surface of the soil just feels really dry. And here's the thing about mulch, it doesn't just help reduce your water evaporating, but it actually helps distribute the water throughout your soil. So if you don't have any mulch, the very bottom of your soil might be quite wet, but the top foot or so is going to be very dry just because the mulch is not there to help balance and distribute that moisture throughout your soil. It does work. I know it sounds like I'm sort of making some stuff up there, but just think about the fact that if your soil is constantly evaporating and you don't have mulch, the top is never going to be as wet as the lower section of the soil. So it really does help distribute that water quite well. So now we're going to put these brassicas into this bed and maybe even the one behind me. The reason why I didn't put peppers here ultimately was because this side of the garden just gets less sun, especially into the winter. Right now it's already fully shaded from any point in the garden. It's no longer in full sun. So that's about an hour and a half before sunset. So that just gives you an idea of that sort of limitation. What we're going to do here is put in the Bellstar broccoli and also the Fioretto cauliflower. The Bellstar is one that does quite well, even if it does get hot, which is why I'm choosing to put that in here. So we're gonna go ahead and just take that start right out of the tub, And I'm going to start on this side. This side gets a little bit more shade. So I want to make sure that the broccoli gets that because I think it'll produce sooner than the cauliflower itself. So I'm gonna just pop this in. I think I have 4 of each or 3 of each. So we're gonna put them pretty close together, and this bed will have space for something else ultimately. The rest of the plants that I have here are a mix of kabocha squash and also center cut squash, which is a summer squash. So I don't want to put them in here to take over this entire garden. I like to keep the pathways here a little bit more clean since it's closer to the kitchen. I don't want to be stumbling around here at night trying to harvest something to only squish one of my vines. So what I'll probably do is take away this extremely sad dead cucumber, and I'll go ahead and sneak one of these center cuts into this garden, but I'll make sure that it stays trellised on this netting over here. That way, I can still make use of this nice plant. It's just so healthy and vigorous looking right now. Got a massive root ball, so we definitely want to preserve that. So let me bring you in a little bit closer over here and I'll show you what I'm doing. So since this plant is so tall already, I don't have to worry too much about getting it right up against the trellis netting. So over there, if I tried to dig it up right next to the trellis, I'd probably interfere with a lot of these cucumber roots. Instead, what I'm going to do is actually dig the hole offset from the netting and let it drape itself up that way. That way I'm helping dodge the cucumbers a little bit, and it also helps distribute the water a little bit better. So I'm gonna dig a pretty decent hole here since the root ball is so big. Try to maximize the roots that we could save from this plant. And the soil is nicely watered, so that's fantastic. It should take really easily. So let's go ahead and take the plant, nestle it in. I'm actually, since I already have a clip here, this is one of those tomato trellis clips. They work perfect on things like squash, especially since the vines never get that thick. So just like so, I could start my trellising. And the idea here is that at the beginning, you just want to give it a helping hand because right now these tendrils don't have anything to grab onto. They've been growing for a long time and never had a home. So all we're doing is giving it a suggestion. I'm laying it up right against this net. And now these tendrils will search for something to grab onto. They'll already be perfectly placed and it'll take off probably tomorrow. So now the only thing I have to do is bury this back in. I don't even need to water considering how nicely watered the soil is, and just cover it back up with mulch. Now, one thing I found lately, this is generally a good recommendation, but now I have a reason to follow it, is not to put your mulch up too close to your plant. What happened with that sad cucumber that I pulled out earlier was that the roly-polies just overtook it. I buried it entirely with the mulch, and that basically allowed them to chew on the stem even in the daytime under the cover of the mulch. So it is important that especially when you just transplant something, you do leave a nice gap of soil around the transplant so that those roly-polies or whatever else you have, maybe it's earwigs, don't munch on your new transplant and kill it before it has a chance to grow. So actually, before we move on from this bed, I did notice something was missing, and that is flowers. So over here I have some zinnias. I want to go ahead and pop in at least one of them in here. Go ahead and put that between the bell-star broccolis, using my hand when I have a shovel, of course. So that guy will go right there, like so. And then this is a flower that I think a lot of people haven't grown before. It's definitely underrated. It's called Tithonia, or I believe the other common name is Mexican sunflower. Now this makes a absolutely stunning sort of reddish, orange, beautiful flower that butterflies go absolutely nuts for. So I definitely want to pop one in on this side of the garden. I have added one to the other side of the garden as well. And basically I want to put as many as I can before the season ends. So I'll add a nice touch of color to this bed that's mostly going to be green otherwise with all these broccolis and cauliflowers. So the other half of this bed will be planted in the future, but right behind me, I'm actually going to sneak in 2 more tomatoes. These are the Principe de Borghese. They're a storage type tomato. I'm not sure if I'm going to give them enough sunlight here to really thrive, but I'm going to try it anyway because I have a nice empty spot right here and one behind it that I think they'll fit in just right. So it's gonna be a little bit tight, but let's go ahead and squeeze this in. So I already have the basil in place here and my Emerald Delight zucchini, which has been absolutely wonderful. That's a keeper. I usually don't like standard zucchini very much, but that one has proven to be not only really delicious, but entirely resistant to powdery mildew. I think I see a couple spores on there, but it's never even tried to take over the plant. So I'm very pleased with the disease resistance there. That's for sure. So these are, I believe, actually an indeterminate or maybe semi-determinate. So I'm going to be planting them a little bit deeper to give them a little extra root run. And the other one's gonna go right next to that squash on the corner here. And there we go. I've been wanting to grow this tomato for quite a while. I probably should have given it the opportunity to grow in the right season, but here in San Diego, we can get away with a little bit like planting tomatoes, even though it's the end of the summertime, basically. So those two are in the ground. And I think we filled in enough beds for one day. Hopefully you guys learned something along the way here and that you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you guys next time.